What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Bryan of Foghat. Great to be able to talk with you today, man. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. We're glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like it's a great time to be talking with you because we're going to be celebrating the return of live music soon with this Foghat North American tour coming. Looking really forward to seeing it. It's going to be a great time. What could we be expecting on this Foghat tour? You know, it's the return of live music. Foghat's gonna has been around for quite a while now. There's a lot to celebrate. What could we be expecting on this tour?
Well, this is a 50th anniversary of the band, if you can believe that. 50 years in rock and roll. That's just crazy. We just had a new release, a double CD with a DVD live show in there that we recorded at Daryl's Live Club. And so it features a lot of the great hits, of course, of the band and some deep album tracks and a couple blues songs. So basically, we're going to do a lot of the songs right off that new release. So be an hour and a half of good old rock and roll. You know, some classic Foghat tunes and a little bit of blues that we love to play, and some fun songs.
And I'd imagine too, because there have been people who've been following you for 50 years, just as long. You know, my dad included. Sorry, Dad, but like, so you know, it's great to hear all the hits and everything like that. But could we be expecting some like deep cuts as well? Some stuff that's never been played before, some stuff that you haven't played in a long time.
Absolutely, yeah. We always like to pull a few deep cuts off albums. You know, every tour we ask our fans to submit some of their requests and what they want to hear, and so we like to change the setup every year a little bit. We have a lot of people that come see us, you know, multiple times, so we change the set every year a little bit. You know, we're always going to play the four or five most favorite songs, of course.
Yeah.
But we always try to pull out a few deep cuts, just you know, for our own amusement as well. It's like, oh, that's a great one. We haven't played that in a while, so we'll add that to the set. And you know, from my old history, play that funky music. You know, in the '70s when I was in Wild Cherry, we're actually going to play that too. So you know,
Wow.
we used to play. You know, we used to play a little snippet of it during introductions, but just for fun, we're going to throw that one in the set too.
That's definitely a song that has like the positive vibe that we've been lacking for quite a while now. So I think that's a great addition to the set list.
Yeah, thanks. Everyone seems to enjoy it and get a little chuckle out of it, you know, myself included. But yeah, it's a very up song, and I think everybody remembers it. I always say, hey, we made the wedding circuit. You know, it's one of those family party songs that gets thrown on there with, you know, We Are Family and Brick House and the Electric Slide when you go to a wedding or any kind of a function, family function. That song seems to sneak in there.
Yeah, it is true. I've always like people like to make fun of wedding music, but you know you made a good song when it's played at people's weddings.
That's
So,
right.
yep.
Because everybody can dance, young and old, you know. It's like, oh, I'll try that one.
Yeah, and every generation, like I graduated high school in 2012, so I'm a little bit on the younger spectrum. But like I remember so many people in my high school singing along to that music, whether it was at every bar mitzvah or every wedding, or just singing it around for shits and giggles at school.
Yeah, I always loved to go to my own family parties, you know, and that would be the one that my great aunts would get out there and shake their booty, you know.
It makes everybody come out of retirement.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Now, and kind of going back to the whole set list too, I wanted to bring that up because being that Foghat has so many albums now, and you have 50 years worth of material, it almost has to get like a little bit difficult to put a set list together for the live show, right? To congest 50 years worth of material in what, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, or something like that.
Right. I mean, there's so many albums. Even if we played one song from every album, you know, that would put us into a 2 to 3 hour range of you know, concert performance, so which we would love, but we don't always get that amount of time to perform. So yeah, so we sort of cherry picked them, and that's every once in a while we'll run a thing on our Facebook, you know, or foghat.com, and we'll run a survey. It's like, which one do you want to hear? So we'll pull a couple from the night watch, you know, what I think we did. Honey Hush is always a favorite one that comes up, you know, and we're doing It Hurts Me Too, which is an old blues song that both Dave and Charlie kill as a vocalist. So yeah, it's a little difficult to choose. So, but you know, we go through them, and I've always been a fan of the song called Midnight Madness, and I've been trying to get that one in the set for some time, but
Yeah.
I haven't succeeded so far. But maybe next tour.
Never say never. Never say never. Now, being that you have played with so many different artists, including Foghat, Wild Cherry, Molly Hatchet, like, is the playing process, the methodology, or even the creative mind frame, like, different depending on the project that you're playing with, or is there like a usual method behind the madness that applies to everything?
For me personally, I do have a way that I approach material and learn it and perform it. So that sort of stays the same, as far as me personally. But every band has its own different way of going about rehearsing and recording and writing. And Molly Hatchet, for instance, it was very guitar centric, being that we played so much harmony guitars through the material. A lot of the songs have extended endings with a lot of, really um, intricate guitar parts that had to be learned and rehearsed meticulously to perform them correctly. I'm basically a blues rock guitarist, so Foghat was a really good fit for me, because that's my natural style. I really learned to play listening to the British invasion guitar players like Clapton and Peter Green, Jeff Beck, and all those great guitar players from the 60s, when they brought American blues basically back to America, only electrified and rocked up. That's when I learned to play guitar. So that's, very embedded in my style. Wild Cherry was funny. I mean, we really studied hard to make the switch, as the song says, from a rock band to a funk band. So we studied, bands like the Commodores, Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, there were so many fabulous rhythm and blues bands at that time. R&B, Average White Band were fantastic. We toured with them. And so, learning that style, was something we put our mind to. The whole club scene at the time was changing from really like a rock listening environment to more of a dance party environment. And, we did our due diligence to learn how to play those songs. And we were actually a pretty great club band before we actually got a recording contract and, went into a concert arenas. We were a dance club band, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, every band has its own particulars, but my personal way of learning is just about the same. You take a song apart piece by piece and put it back together, and then memorize it and hope to perform it correctly
I feel
when
like
you get on stage.
is it me, and this could just be my own little analysis, but it almost seems like Foghat is like the bridge between what you've done with Wild Cherry and Molly Hatchet, because I feel like Molly Hatchet, had a lot of great, harmony guitars, as you were saying, and like Wild Cherry is very blues driven, but then like Foghat almost seems to kind of be like a real combination of the two. It almost seems like you take the best of both worlds into that, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because there are certain parts in Foghat material that are necessary to make the song be what it is. Rod Price's slide guitar parts, for instance, are very, intricate, and I try to duplicate them as close as possible, especially on songs like Stone Blue or Slow Ride, where they're very signature licks. So you have to play those parts correctly and keep them as close to the record as possible. But also, there's a little bit of leeway in there for improvisation, just being the nature of blues rock. As we always have a little area in a solo or an intro, outro where we can improvise and, and express ourselves a little bit differently. So there is that little time period in almost every song where there's, a little free form action. And then also, like Molly Hatchet, very orchestrated and structured parts as well. And so we do. It does combine a little bit of what we did in Wild Cherry, which was, you want to keep that beat and the enthusiasm, and we're more of a boogie blues band in Foghat, but we still want to get that crowd energy going like we did in Wild Cherry with the dance energy. But we also want to play the songs correctly and then have a little bit of fun improvisational wise, instrumentally.
Yeah, I've always said that the solo in Slow Ride is what I call the six signature solos, the SSS, along with Slow Ride, Sweet Child of Mine, Sweet Home Alabama, Smells Like Teen Spirit, Stairway to Heaven, and Smoke on the Water. Those are the six sinister solos, as I've always said, or the six signature solos.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's a good list to be on there.
Do you actually? Because I've always thought that blues music, because blues, what I've admired about it, it's very technically impressive, but it does also like have a rebellious nature behind it as well. I feel like that was one of the many things that made blues such a signature style was like, it had a rebellious form to it. But is there a theoretical element that you follow behind your guitar playing as well? Like, is your work rather studied in a way, or do you tend to like to improvise and experiment?
I personally improvise and experiment when left to my own devices if we're writing new material, and but yeah, I think all of our recordings, lately when we do them, they're sort of spontaneous in a way. But then after a amount of time of playing and rehearsing, certain ideas rise, and then certain, I guess, instrumentation and certain arrangements, I guess, become set. So it starts out basically when we, particularly when you get to solo sections, but when we write a song, we work on it for a couple days, sometimes weeks, and get the arrangement correct. So it starts out sort of like inspiration, and then it, becomes into a more coalesced arrangement after an amount of time. Always with a little bit of improvisational left in the solo sections, we can expand it. Sometimes we'll get on stage and a certain section will be basically one or two turnarounds for a solo. We might take that 20 times around if we're feeling like particularly into jamming or something. So it goes a little bit both ways. It starts as inspiration and improvisation, and then it sort of coalesces into an arrangement.
Yeah, I'd imagine inspiration strikes as sometimes the most inconvenient times as well, right?
Yeah, I always say that. I've had several times I've been, just watching TV in bed and go, ooh, idea, get it down.
Yeah.
Sort of like the Keith Richards way, keep a little notepad next to your bed, and when you get those ideas flying by, try to catch them while they go.
Yeah, I saw something really scary one time where somebody was trying to make like their car into like a recording studio just because they take inspiration from driving all the time. So like, but I'm like, that sounds really dangerous. I hope you're not taking out any of the essential parts of the car to make that happen.
Sounds like a good idea, but I haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah, that's why I was always terrified.
It'd be nice to be able to press a button on the dashboard and say record.
Yeah, that's why
I guess you can pretty much can with your phone now.
Well, that's why I was terrified when Bruce Dickinson was flying planes. I'm like, well, I hope that guy doesn't get inspired from like flying around. I hope he's not recording ideas as he's approaching the tarmac or something like that.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. Him being able to fly those the big jumbos too. I mean, he was a major pilot.
Yep, he had the lives of many in his hand. But that would be the one time I would embrace all the turbulence in the world.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine running off a concert stage and then getting in the cockpit of a big giant plane and flying to your next destination. It's pretty impressive, really.
Yeah, but Bruce Dickinson's a cyborg, so he can do it. But yeah. Now, do you find it maybe easier to like get that inspiration or maybe formulate ideas when you're the company of other bandmates, or isolation is also a great fuel for creativity? Do you prefer to maybe come up with new ideas when you're alone and there's nothing between you or your instrument?
I come up with ideas. Funny enough, we do sound checks every day before concerts. I come up with a lot of ideas just by checking my equipment, and noodling around. I go, oh, that's an interesting little riff. I hope I remember that later. But when it comes to actually taking that little bit of inspiration or a guitar lick or a little riff that I like and turning it into a song, I generally do a lot better collaborating with other people. So if I have a little guitar idea, I will at some point, if it stays around long enough, take it to Roger and Charlie and Rodney and say, well, here's an idea. What do you want to do with it? Because I'm not really a great lyricist. I would leave that up to Charlie and coming up with a vocal melody. So I come up with little pieces that are inspiring, little guitar motifs, and then I'll to transform it into anything that of a real song or that would be recordable. I would bring it to the rest of the guys in the band to finish it off.
Yeah, and going back to like the history of Foghat and the long 50-year history, when you came into Foghat, were you like kind of like being like, okay, this is how I have to play, or were you allowed to like bring in a lot of your own ideas and bring a new sort of element into Foghat?
Yeah, I was absolutely allowed to be myself, and I think the reason I ended up in the band was because how I play sort of fit the band, from the get-go. So I became friends. I had a blues band, how I got in the band, and I've been in it over 20 years. which is even, you know, was a short amount of time considering the 50-year history of the band. And Roger Earl, you know, goes all the way back to the day one. It's amazing legacy that he has. To, you know, be, I mean, to have a band for 50 years is just sort of crazy, and to be in at 20 is crazy to me. But I mean, it's been a long time. But when I met Dave, I was working as a recording engineer in Florida, and he had just moved to Florida. My friend Pat Travers brought him to my band's performance in a nightclub in Orlando, which we had a four-piece blues band at the time. Dave loved our set list. We played all this obscure Louisiana swamp blues and southeastern blues, which was, you know, eclectic really, and he knew every song. He was a blues historian, so he asked to sit in with us, and we became fast friends just from jamming and having a, you know, common love of blues music. So if it was a very natural combination, me and Dave, we just hit it off right, you know, from Jump Street, and became best friends, and so my musical style really suited his style as well, and the way he wrote and played and the music he loved. We had similar tastes, and so it was a natural fit for me. So I was able to, you know, come in exactly as I am and how I play, and fit the music and the style of Foghat, you know, pretty much immediately.
That's always great. It sounded like a very organic transition and a very easy, because it's not the case with a lot. Like I still can't comprehend or fathom that like some people, and you know it works a lot of the time, but like that they just hold auditions and they, you know, bring in stranger after stranger who they never played with before, and they have to feel out, like that just sounds so complex in a way. So
Yeah, really. And I think, you know, Foghat being an established band already had a set sound and a song list, and you know, so they knew what they were looking for when they were, you know, replacing Rod and bringing me in. Not, you know, Rod retired actually, but when Dave brought me in, you know, I was a known, you know, commodity, and Foghat had a, you know, definite history and a sound that they had already established. But you know, I'm pretty sure back in the day, Roger tells a story about auditioning for Jimi Hendrix. I mean, they actually did a, you know, full-on audition, finding people to be in the experience, you know, and Roger was one of the drummers that auditioned, and Mitch Mitchell got the job. So I think probably back in the day when Foghat was formed, you know, that was probably more of a scenario that happened where auditions were happening, and, you know, everyone was feeling each other out, what kind of music they like. So I think that happens mostly in the inception of a band, but to join an established band that has a little bit of a different thing going on.
definitely. And the final question I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, actually, is because I always find it admirable when people are pursuing their passion and their careers in music for as long as 50 years, 20 years, 30 years. But, you know, I've talked to a lot of musicians who are like my generation, like in their mid 20s, early 30s, and like, you know, some of them are like, oh man, I'm getting kind of burned out. I don't know like how I could do this, or like, you know, I'm just curious, how does an artist keep it interesting? Because there is, I think it's fair to say, when you do something for a long period of time, there is sort of like, you know, you need to take a break, or you need to recollect yourself, explore other territory. How do you maintain a love for music? I know I'm almost kind of like asking for like musical marital counseling in this regard, but like,
You know, it's there's several factors in that. First of all, you have to love what you do, and I think it's a blessing in it for anybody in life to find that thing that they really, as my dad would say, do for free, and make it your job. You know, so that is a blessing in and of itself, to find that thing that you love to do. The other thing is having friends that, you know, I mean, being in a band for 20 years is pretty remarkable, because we get along as friends and family. I mean, it's you know, playing is something we do, but we a lot of bands, you know, you have divisiveness, and you know, don't get along. Some of the greatest bands in history, you know, have broken up. Just, you know, look at the Oasis, the brothers, you know, can't get along, and they, you know, made great music for a while and then lost the grip on the other side of being in the band, which is the family part. So, you know, it's a combination of things. I know from this pandemic year, sitting at home is not what I want to do. You
yeah.
know, I didn't mind being, you know, off for a month or two. We haven't had a vacation in years, because we play all year long, every year. So the first couple of months was nice. After that, it was like forced retirement, and I, you know, totally missed it. Missed my friends, missed hanging out with them, missed the travel, missed playing in front of a crowd. So you have to, I guess, enjoy all aspects of what being in a band is about for it to last this long. And I, you know, I feel very blessed. It's just so natural. You know, we don't see each other. It's like missing your family, you know, and I just these past couple of weeks where we're back on tour now, to see my brothers every weekend. It's like, oh man, how's it going? Great. This feels more normal than sitting at home on my couch watching Netflix, you know. So
Yeah.
so it's we're just blessed to be in a band that everybody likes each other and we get along. We enjoy making music together, and we have great songs to play. And the crowds are still coming out to see us and enjoying our music. So it's couldn't be better for me. So it's hard to give advice to a young person other than you keep your eyes open for that situation and look sometimes beyond the thing that's right in front of you, which is the music or the performance, and look deeper into the people that you're becoming hooked up with, and hope to make that something that's a lifelong endeavor, not just an immediate thing.
Yeah, and I do have a little bit of faith that, like, any bands that were feeling burned out before the pandemic, now it's going to be as if they never felt that way before when they return to the road.
Yeah, well, that's you don't know what you got till it's gone, kind of a deal, right?
Yeah.
So once well, maybe that those guys aren't that much of a jerk. They're not jerks. I kind of miss them, and then you get back on stage and see the people again, and you become thankful for what you might have taken for granted.
Definitely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote for the Foghat tour with the new release and everything like that?
Well, pick up our new release, and everything about Foghat is foghat.com. That's where all our tour dates go up as soon as we book them. There's a lot of history there, a lot of pictures, and pretty much all the information you need from a Foghat perspective.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Bryan of Foghat. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
And we'll see you up there in New York.
Hell yeah.